You've completed your 8th week of studies in New Testament Exposition 1. Once your assignments and exam are complete, you're done with this course and you can move on to New Testament Exposition 2. This lesson was entitled Paul's Letter to the Romans. In the lecture, we discovered why Paul's authorship of Romans was so certain among scholars. The letter to the Romans claims to have been written by Paul, and historically, New Testament scholarship has been so certain of Paul's authorship of the book that it served as an important standard for evaluating the claim of Paul's authorship in these letters. Paul's travel plans have been seen as important to the dating of Romans. His third missionary journey probably extended from around 2051 to the winter of 54 to 55. Key factors for dating this journey are the dates of Paul's stay in Corinth during the second missionary journey and are established by the Delphi inscription and the probable date of Paul's arrest in Jerusalem. They can be calculated based on Roman Tribune statement in Acts 21:38 and the ascension of Festus. It was discovered in the lecture that the occasion for Paul's letter to the Romans was his anticipated trip to Jerusalem to deliver the Gentiles' offering to the poor Christ followers there in Jerusalem, Romans 15:20. And this offering was seen by Paul as a way to promote good relations between the Gentile and Jewish Christ followers. Also, Paul planned to move on to Spain to preach the gospel, and support of that mission was occasioned in this letter. Finally, recently returned Jews after the expulsion of Claudius may have required some direction from the apostle to the Gentiles with regard to how these Gentiles should comport themselves among the Jewish Christ followers. This occasion supports Paul's purpose for writing, which includes: first, Paul wanted to remind the Roman Christ followers of some of the fundamental truths of the gospel in fulfillment of his priestly duty of proclaiming the gospel to the Gentiles, Romans 15:14-16. Second, Paul wanted to address several of the problems faced in the Roman ecclesiae. In particular, he wanted to call them to unity. Third, Paul wanted to formally introduce himself to the Roman ecclesiae and to solicit their support for his Spanish mission. Either in the reading or in the lecture, several textual issues were discussed. A few to recall include: 1. The all in Romans 3:23 is not a limitative use of pas, rather, it is inclusive of all humanity. With regard to Romans 7 and its various interpretations, we should remember that we can't use it as a justification for sin. The point of the passage is that human weakness makes it impossible for the Mosaic law to set us free from sin and death. The discussion then expands to whether or not this refers to pre- or post-conversion life and experience. It seems the passage has the unbeliever in view. With regard to the therefore in Romans 12:1, the idea is that on the basis of all the foregoing arguments of the letter, Christ followers are called to respond to God's mercy by devoting their lives to Him and allowing their cognitive processes to be transformed in order to know God's will. With regard to how individuals are viewed as righteous by God, the focus here is the righteousness imputed by God to the Christ follower. The identification of the righteousness of God as a gift that God imputes to the sinner who believes in Christ is clear throughout this letter. Evidence for this view can be seen in Romans 1:17, as well as Romans 3:25 and 26. The letter itself has 7 sections. These include: first, the introduction in chapter 1, 1-15. The theme in chapter 1, verses 16 and 17. The righteousness of man, which is in 1:18 to 4:25. Benefits conferred by the gospel in 5:1 to 8:39. The righteousness of God in Israel's rejection in 9:1 to 3 to 11:36. Next, the practical implications of the gospel in 12:1 to 15:13. And then the conclusion in 15:14 to 16:27. We also noted in the reading and the lecture that Romans' contribution to the canon includes: 1. The gospel promised through the prophets and preached by Paul. 2. Righteousness and justification by faith apart from the law. 3. Promotion of Jew-Gentile unity on the basis of the universality of sin, the free gift of salvation through Jesus Christ, and God's all-encompassing plan of salvation. 4. The impossibility of keeping the law and new life in the Spirit. And finally, God's salvation historical plan for Jews and Gentiles, past, present, and future.